welcome to part 2 of our conversation with Krystle about her novel, Legacy of the Brightwash. This conversation will cover topics like violence and sex, so if that's not for you, see you next time.
It's the hard-hitting interview questions now.
Exactly. Krystle, as you may have noticed, the previous questions were mostly curated by Sarah from Twitter and also her own questions. But now you got some questions from me. I hope you're excited.
I am excited.
Hey, Krystle, how come DILF is not a more commonly used term?
You know, the unofficial answer is I don't know, and I wish it was a commonly used term. But my real angry woman answer is that men get to be everything, and they're not, reduced to just one aspect of their lives like women are. And once a woman becomes a mother, that is the only thing she is. So it's like really shocking that you would want to have sex with her. Now she's a mother.
To clarify, DILF is dad I would like to fuck.
Oh, yeah.
Versus MILF, which is mother I would like to fuck.
Yeah. Yeah, and see, it's shocking to think that a woman who's had children could also be a sexual being.
Right.
But men get to be sexual their whole lives without anyone being shocked by it. So I would say that's probably why it's not common. But I say we should, objectify everyone equally.
Equal opportunity objectification.
Yeah.
That's our podcast slogan.
Can it? Can that be our new slogan?
Yes.
Strike out where we discuss books and other things too, and just equal opportunity objectification.
Where we discuss books and equal opportunity objectification.
Yes, do it.
Okay, this is not an entire nonsense question. In one of the very early scenes where we're introduced to Toshway, his coworker brings in a baby, and Toshway, holds the baby and calms the baby down because he is a father and knows how to do baby stuff and all of the entailing things. I know. I am clearly not a child-having person with this description. But yeah. Gosh, men holding babies, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
For a person who likes babies, it's a good thing.
In my experience, men do really like holding babies, and maybe I'm just surrounded by some pretty great men. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's not something that's reduced to women, or not something that's exclusively women. Men like playing with babies too, because babies are cute if that's what you're into.
Right.
One of the reasons why I really pushed Lily to read Legacy of the Brightwash was because I was like, oh, she'll like this aspect of Toshway an awful lot.
Yeah. It's not that men don't like playing with babies. It's that something in my lizard brain just goes, that guy, he knows how to take care of children. Isn't that awesome? Yes, it is.
On the one hand, it kind of sucks that it's that shocking when you come across it, but then on the other hand, it's like I will campaign to bring more parents into fantasy, because I feel like we're people too. We still exist after we make babies. So, and Tasha's been a father longer than I've been a mother, so it tracked that he would have children.
Well, it is a phenomenon I've noticed. If you are ever in a shopping mall ever again, fingers crossed, and one little kid shouts mom or dad, and just watching all of the heads swivel.
You can see the parents in the room.
Yeah.
That one mine. Yeah. The really seasoned ones don't look. It's only the new ones that look, that haven't kind of attuned their psychic powers to their child's voice yet.
This is a very serious question.
Uh-oh.
So I we need to recenter. On a scale from liar to Toshway, how into beards are you?
The answer is Karim.
Yeah.
No, he's not
off the scale. I didn't even know it went that high.
Yeah, see, I think Karim is higher on the scale than Toshway, because he's like, he's got quite a lush. He's got the kind of beard that costume supervisors glue onto men to make them look regal and kingly. Like he's got like full. So yeah, my
context, that's Krystle's husband.
Oh,
I didn't know if he wanted to be involved in the podcast, so I wasn't going to name him. But
too late.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, but that's my Twitter profile picture right now has him in it, and it's pretty full and lush in that picture. So
he's anyway. your beard inspiration.
He is. I knew nothing about beards until I married him, and lo, forever after, Tasha was described as a bearded man.
It's so fun how there are some things you can pick up in a book. You're like, all right, author, ma'am. I see where you're coming from.
I mean, like honestly, better beards than the spanking in Robert Jordan's books.
That's true. But that's us being
you haven't
judgy.
read Ishmael's books yet, though.
Well, okay, but also if you include spanking, I'm pretty sure you're going to do it better than Robert Jordan.
It's not the inclusion of spanking; it is the preoccupation with spanking.
Yeah, that's true too.
The spanking as a recourse between adults as like a punishment is weird.
Yeah, that was our. It should not be a punishment. It should be a consensual sex act. Those are two completely different things.
Ishmael's going to have consensual.
I'm looking forward to Ishmael's spanking scenes, whether he's the one doing the spanking or not. No, but
what if I was bluffing?
Well, you're committed to it now.
Now you have to include it.
I'm not cutting this part.
And Kipler are now committed into the series.
And Kipler's surviving.
Canon. Yeah, Kipler's surviving.
Let's hit my last question before we can get to the spoiler section. How do you pronounce this word I have only ever read and never heard out loud?
Whinging.
Whinging?
Quit whinging.
All right, thank you. That concludes my questions. That does actually, I noticed at the beginning of your book, you have a disclaimer that says this book is written in Canadian English. And I was wondering, but did you get shit?
No, but there's people pick up self-published books and go looking for errors. So Canadian English is a hybrid between the British and American English. So we use the extra U's like the British English do, but we use IZE at the end of words like realize instead of an ISE.
Except that you pronounce it Zed.
Yes, see, we are a hybrid.
I'm just giving you shit at this point. I hope you know.
I don't even remember which is which though. Like, how would you pronounce it?
Z.
Oh, okay. Well, it's Zed. And color is spelt with a U.
Yeah, well, I will agree with you there, but that's not how I'm supposed to spell it.
Yeah. It's just something that someone advised that I put in just because people go looking for flaws. Just because people come to us in the self-published community with this preconceived notion that we're of a lower quality and they look for proof. So that's just one of the things that I put in just to...
So is that something that British self-publishers feel that they have to add?
I don't think so.
So it's specifically because you're in this kind of nebulous area of...
I get that, though. If you're expecting one or the other, a hybrid will look like a mistake.
Yeah, I think that's generally what it is, because it's like I think people are used to switching back and forth because there are a lot of British fantasy writers for whatever reason. Like there's a lot of people writing in British English, and then of course there's a lot of American. So just the hybrid of both. Somebody flagged something. I think it was a sensitivity reader. She kept flagging some of my my Canadian spelling on things, just not realizing. And I mean, thank you, but also. No, I'm not wrong. So it was just
cover your ass sort of thing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry that you had to include it. But also I understand.
To be fair though, at least I came into this book knowing Krystle was Canadian. which is definitely context that helps for that kind of thing.
I don't. But
that's the difference.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's something that I specifically notice.
Something that you specifically link to spelling, I bet.
Yeah, like, but I feel like I'm so used to at this point reading both American spelling and British spelling in fantasy novels that I wouldn't necessarily pick up on or obviously pick up on the fact that one book is combining the two.
Yeah.
I don't know about spelling, but I definitely would notice slang. Although I think that's less of a Canadian thing. But if someone was like, I think I've complained about this with Krystle before even.
Yeah.
Like boots and lifts versus trunks and elevators.
Yeah,
if someone was swapping between those, I would notice that and go, what?
Slang, yes. I agree with you there. But as long as it's consistent throughout the novel, like I wouldn't necessarily think, oh, this person is wrong. I would just
but consistent throughout the novel is the thing.
Yes.
Being consistently Canadian could appear to be waffling in between American and British.
That's generally what it is. That's what I was just.
Well, no, what I'm saying is that like if you are but
you don't go hunting for spelling errors, right?
Well, no, obviously I don't. But but I'm saying like so I'm obviously not Canadian, and I don't know how.
I don't know. You're really nice. You might be partially Canadian.
maybe I'm secretly Canadian. Yeah. But like I don't know how Canadian slang works. But as long as one word is consistent, like if you use boot throughout the entirety of the novel, even if your other slang maybe veers between American and British, I wouldn't necessarily notice that you were going from those
you're building a world that way.
In a fantasy world I think that's probably true. I would maybe say interesting choice and then move on. But if it was supposed to take place in our world, I would
and if you were
yes if it was supposed to if it was urban fantasy, for example, which is
and it's supposed to be a New Yorker and he's saying boot, then
that I would notice. But if it's a fantasy novel and you say boot in one place but elevator in the other because they're referring to different terms, I'm not necessarily going to make the assumption that you're veering between US and British terms.
Some people just like to look for flaws, though.
I mean, some people are assholes. Yeah.
I did not say it.
I'm
happy to say that.
Far too Canadian to say that on the record.
All right, before we do move on into our delightfully spoiler-full conversation, Sarah, why should you read this book?
You should read this book if you want an interesting mystery with really compelling multi-dimensional characters and a lot of whiskey.
There's also a heavy dose of flirting all around.
And yes, the sexual tension between Stella and Toshway is just like A+.
I didn't even name those names. There's just a lot of flirting in this book.
There's a lot of flirting too, but like the sexual tension between those two is A+.
And said mystery gets pretty dark.
Yes.
I think that should be said.
It should be said. We are having a really good time laughing and joking, but it's heavy and I know it.
One of the things that Lily and I were talking about before we started recording and before you came on was how she was really surprised at how
that you even liked it.
Well, yeah, because so I'm not a horror reader, and she was like, wow, this is a lot of horror aspects to it.
Oh, really? I'm not a horror reader either. That's my Dennis Lehane influences coming out, though. He's pretty dark.
I realize that I may be using the genre terms incorrectly. I don't really give a fuck what other people define genres as.
Yeah, whatever.
But I would call mutilated babies pretty horrific.
Yeah, that's my Dennis Lehane influence. Yeah. I was saying the other day that it's like if David Gemmell heroic fantasy got thrown off the rails by Dennis Lehane crime and grime, that's me. That's what I want to. That's the target I've always wanted to hit, because the two of them are just so interesting and they tell such human stories, but also high highs with beautiful love stories, but also like.
Yeah.
You lie to people.
I mean, Brightwash, like, I don't view it necessarily as a grimdark story. I'm not a grimdark reader, and I feel like the tone is maybe slightly different, but it has a lot of really dark points specifically to the society in which they live.
Yeah.
And if you're not prepared for that, maybe you shouldn't read this book. But if you want a really great exploration of that, like, this is the book for you.
Yeah.
Don't come to this book if you just want smooching.
Yeah.
Come to this book if you want smooching with a not backstory, but like
a bleak society.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been pitching it. I've been thinking of pitching it as romantic grimdark, where it's like it's kind of a hybrid of both.
But I also think it's worth pointing out the romance plotline is not what makes it grimdark.
Yeah, right? It's the society that makes it grimdark.
Yeah.
Right, but the relationships explored are all happy, consenting.
Yeah. They're very human.
Not necessarily functional, but definitely not. But they are not the horror. I think that's worth
they are not the
out.
horror. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, it is a societal bleakness that they're facing, and the relationships, I was hoping, give it a line of hope that carries through.
Well, and something that I would really like to point out is that I really like how aware, how much awareness there is of the power imbalance in some of the relationships, and that carries out through the characters and through the narration. And again, that's not something that you see in all of fantasy, you know.
You just finished reading Wheel of Time.
I just finished reading Wheel of Time. Yeah,
power imbalance there that was perhaps unremarked upon.
There's some power imbalances in that book, yeah. But it's really refreshing to see that at least commented on, you know, in character motivation.
I struggled over too, like, I don't know if that belongs in the spoiler tag, but I guess not, because we've said who he is. But yeah, like, Toshio struggles over whether or not it's even right for him to pursue Stella just because of the power imbalance, rather than him being, well, this is what I want, so I'm gonna take it. I felt like that was important to address.
I think it would be really easy to write a character like Toshio who doesn't have, and he has a lot of self-awareness.
A little bit of self-loathing.
Well, self-loathing too, but like, at least the narration has a lot of self-awareness, and it would be really easy to write a character that doesn't have that. And
you know what? He used to not have it. He used to be more in line with the idea of that's how men talk and that's how men behave. And then I met Kareem and I learned that there's a different kind of man out there, and Toshio got better as a person thanks to him. So I want to shout out to, my beard. He made Toshio better, because I used to believe that that's how men talk. But Kareem taught me that that's not true. Not all men are that awful. So he made Toshio better. So he deserves props for showing me that a better version of man was available. So.
There's a lot of conversation around the concept of toxic masculinity, but not a lot of exploration of what positive masculinity looks like.
Yeah.
And I think that the male characters in this book absolutely display positive masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can still be tough. Yeah.
And they don't always make great choices. That's fine. They're human.
We're still human, and they can still be tough, and they can still be, sexual human beings, and they can still defend the things that they believe in, but it's how they treat the people, the women, especially in their lives, whether they're treating them as objects for their pleasure or as fellow human beings.
Mm-hmm. I would expand that to also what they take pride in.
Yeah.
Because there is, again, a concept of healthy pride, and what are you proud of about yourself, and how does that manifest in how you interact with the world? It's really nice seeing male characters with those positive masculinity aspects, because I think we forget that piece in a lot of, it's easy to critique the bad stuff,
Yeah,
What's
of course
the
it
good
is.
stuff
Yeah,
look like?
it's easy to point out the things that don't work for us, but then we need to examine the things that make us feel good as human beings too, just so that there's a model there, and also just so that men who are trying their best in a world that tells them to behave a certain way, and maybe that sometimes they slide that way, but they are trying their best. They deserve props, because the world is or our society likes to tell them that they should behave a certain way. And a lot of the men who feel like, no, I don't think that's true, kind of get ostracized. So, there are other kinds of positive masculinity that I really enjoy exploring in all of the many men that I write about. And I think I'm at the point now where every single one of my point of view male characters cries somewhere in their arc, which is probably not true for Lorne yet in Brightwash, but it's going to be true soon. So, let men cry, okay? They
let
can
men
still
cry.
be men. Yeah.
Absolutely. To avoid spoilers for Legacy of the Brightwash, skip to 5025. If you have an answer to this question, I think it'd be a fun question. What part of this book made you cry?
So I generally cry at the drop of a hat.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I'm not one of those people who doesn't cry and notices when they cry. Like I just cry all the time.
I think one of your answers the first time you read the book was the same as mine, where Karen was talking about being hot glass.
Yes. That is a really emotional point. And I didn't cry reading that this time, but I am sure that I would have that I cried the first time when I read that.
Yeah.
So it's more unusual if a book doesn't make me cry than if it does make.
That's how you know it's not working for you.
Yeah. So I'm not sure that I could pinpoint necessarily one specific scene that I cried at, because there are a lot of really emotional scenes in this book that really, like, if you have a heart that really just dig into you.
I tear up pretty easily, but I don't think I actually cry.
Oh, I cry.
Yeah. So while I teared up at many moments, the one point for me that really got me was in the aftermath of the fire in the marketplace. There was a woman who had lost her father.
Oh.
And Stella goes and sits with her. And that was...
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's heart-wrenching. I mean, there are so many heart-wrenching moments in this book. Like, goddamn, Krystle, you did good.
I think something about the parent death, though, is that it is so... I mean, it's inevitable.
It's inevitable. It's natural. And yet...
Yeah.
It's kind of a scary thing to face.
It's inevitable and universal and terrifying all at once in one little nugget of here you go, have a nice afternoon.
Yeah, sorry, not sorry.
So that was a kind of downer way to start the spoiler section.
Yeah.
But
I make people cry for a living.
Yeah, but you do it well.
But this book also had high points.
Yes.
And yes, Lily, it does have high points.
You completely already answered this question. Do you have plans to delve deeper into these backstories?
Yeah. Ilya, well, I really enjoyed Ilya, figuring out Ilya and Amyas. Ilya lost kind of the love of her life, and at some point she says the best parts of her were buried with him. And so going forward, I don't know if she has much more to say about her past, but going forward, a lot of that is going to drive her. Now, how spoilery can I get in the spoiler section? I guess this is for people who read it, right? So
for Legacy of the Brightwash, you can spoil whatever you want.
Yeah, so she's at the end of the book, she's pregnant. So she's going to have to face the new grief of realizing that she's finally bringing a child into the world, but it's not Amyas's child as she always kind of imagined it would be. So going forward, we get more from her about the complexity and the longevity of her grief over him. And also Wolf too, because Ammias is General Wolf's son. So to him, in his mind, Ilia is already his daughter-in-law, even though she's not. So going through that journey of pregnancy with her is going to be like bringing his grandchild into the world, even though it's not. So yeah, I think she's got more to say.
Well, it's not genetically, but that's not
emotionally though.
Yeah. That's okay. I definitely read that scene too quickly because I had not realized she had decided to keep it.
I don't think so. I read that scene this morning because I was leaving things.
Best time to have a conversation with you guys though when it's like fresh.
Yeah, it's very fresh, and I don't think that it's necessarily like at some point I was thinking, well, is she keeping the child or not? It's not really clear that she decides to keep the child in Brightwash. It's left a little bit open-ended.
Surprise, she's keeping it.
Well, okay. So that is to say, I mean, yeah.
She has to decide what to do. It's kind of how I read that scene. I'm not surprised to hear that she decides to keep it.
Right. It's not a surprise that she keeps it, but
she's driven by her legacy and what she's giving to the future. So I guess it never even occurred to me or to her. What she needs to figure out what to do is what to do about her actual husband, who is very much not the father of her child. So that's her journey of what she's willing to do.
Well, that's how I read it. Now you know.
Yeah.
I'm okay. Now that we're in the spoiler section, I can talk about how much I love Ilia.
Yeah.
Ilia is wonderful and I love her, except that I also, as I've said, think that she's going to be a huge villain.
Okay, but because she's in politics, but her political rival mutilates babies. Doesn't that make her a good guy?
No, that doesn't necessarily make her a good guy. It makes her better than the other guy.
That's what you got.
But that in itself does not make you, just because you're better than the other person doesn't mean that you are by default a good guy.
Neither does being in politics make you a bad guy.
No, but she gives off such bad person in politics vibes.
I disagree.
I'm sure I'm not spoiling anything by saying she's in it for herself, and the winds are blowing against the authority right now, and she didn't know what the authority was up to, but she's in it for Winter, for the legacy of her family and her business. So the wind's blowing against the future of the authority is merely incidental, and that is why she's against it right now. So she's a villain in that she's an antagonist to what Toshua is going to want in the near future. However, her actions will aid him.
Well, that's my reading of the book that I have just read as well.
Yeah,
if you don't want to get into spoiler future stuff. Like, her helping Toshua is like, she's doing it because it's going to help herself. That's fine.
I mean, she's very self-serving.
Yes.
And she's not, that's not what gives me villain vibes. Like, it's not the act.
There's a knowledge that if the winds were blowing the other way, she wouldn't. Yeah. And that's a fair
reading. Like and I love her. Like, I don't want to imply that I don't think she's a great character, because I do think she's wonderful, and I love the depth to her that she gets. But also, I'm pretty sure she's going to end up being an antagonist.
Well, I think she might antagonize Toshua, but I also think Toshua sometimes makes bad decisions, and maybe his antagonists aren't always bad.
Well, yes, there's that too. But it's I don't think that she is an antagonist. Like,
you think morally she will be antagonistic.
I think that she would be an antagonist even if
I know Krystle's dying.
yeah,
You gotta let us work through this.
Yeah, Krystle is dying. Yes, I think that she is in it for her own self.
Yes.
Whether that benefits society or not.
Yes. That's a good clarification.
Yeah.
Because it's not just antagonizing Toshway, it's whether or not Rayner and the Authority are morally right or wrong doesn't matter. What matters is that it's a sinking ship.
Yeah, I don't think she cares about that in particular. You know, so I think that she goes along with whatever benefits herself.
But isn't she pragmatic enough to realize that a system built on this garbage is not gonna withstand the test of time?
But I don't think she cares about the system itself.
No, but that's fine. Someone doing a good thing for a bad reason is still doing a good thing.
No, okay, but that's fine. Even if she ends up doing good for bad reasons, i.e. self-serving reasons, I think that she would do bad for those same reasons.
Yeah,
but I don't think she would, considering what she knows at the end of the book.
No, I think she still would.
Well, okay, she would, but I think considering where what I know has ended. Okay, granted that last page throws us for a loop. I don't know what's going to go on with that. Not even going to get into it now. In case anyone in the spoiler section chapter, maybe it's not the last one, but for anyone listening who hasn't read this, Toshway gets arrested at the end is what I'm referring to. So that is a big question mark. However, I feel okay, Krystle, you're just gonna have to you can make faces, but we have to talk about this. I'm sorry.
We have to work through this.
So she has clearly been on Nathaniel Wolf, I think is his name.
General Wolf.
I feel like he might end up being completely self-serving. And we have only seen him manipulating Toshway until this point. So she has been helping him because she trusts him for whatever reason.
Okay,
father-in-law or sister herself.
I'm not disagreeing there because I do think that there is more to his character than the very upright general that Toshway sees. But that doesn't stop the fact that I think that Ilya is also going to end up being kind of villainous. Sure, General Wolf can end up being the villain too.
That's really interesting. This is my favorite part about giving my stories to other people because you guys are picking up things that I hadn't even considered.
I have to say, you being here puts our debates into a whole different vibe.
And it's I wonder how much to say just because I love listening to it. I all my faces aren't because I disagree.
No, I love it.
Because I want to say what's coming, but then at the same time saying what's coming is major spoilers.
I don't think Ilya would ever betray Wolf. That is not the vibe I get from that book.
No, she loves him. She loves him beyond the capacity that she even knows she's capable of, just because.
I don't think that she would betray him intentionally.
Yes. However,
I think that she would work towards what she thinks he wants, but what she thinks he wants is not necessarily what he actually wants, because she is a very complex character who is driven by complex motivations, and he is a pretty straightforward, genuine human being.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe the problem is that I see mutilated babies as a pretty black and white issue.
Yeah.
Maybe that is revolutionary.
Yeah.
I mean,
but the way Kaz reacts to it makes me think that the people in this world see it the same way if they knew what was going on. And now that this has been revealed, I think it completely changes. So we have seen Ilya acting without that knowledge. And now she has that knowledge, and I think that will change the way she acts. We gotta move on because we're gonna give Krystle an aneurysm.
I know what she's gonna do.
I know you know. All right, Krystle. Is talent a metaphor? And if so, what for?
It wasn't intended to be a metaphor. It was just my interpretation of how we use magic. And I kind of linked it into some spiritual stuff that I believe in our ability to kind of move the world. And of course, amplified because it's a fantasy novel, but it wasn't intended to be a specific metaphor. However, people are reading it as a metaphor for queerness, which probably makes sense considering who wrote it, where it's something that you're born with and it's something that may or may not really complicate your life. And it's something that you have to kind of come to terms with and make decisions about. Some other people have read it as a metaphor for neurodiversity, such as, autism spectrum and ADHD. So it's really neat to see how people are responding to it in ways that when I step back and go, yeah, that tracks. Yeah, because it's all things that, we as humans have to kind of navigate our way through in various cultures. Us living in a heteronormative culture have to navigate through any sexuality beyond that, and then us navigating a world where we're generally see ableism as superior. Anyone who is differently abled has to navigate through what that's going to mean, and it doesn't go away, and it should be seen as an integral part of yourself rather than something that makes you tainted. So it's really neat to see how people are reading it in ways that I didn't think of, but totally tracks.
I have to confess I stole this question from Sarah. I did not write it.
And I have to confess that I stole this question from Connor. Because I didn't write it either.
Okay.
He's one of the ones that read it as a metaphor for queerness. And when he said it, it was like, yeah, I believe that. That sounds like something that would be really intelligent. And see, that's why I say there's stuff in there that's happening that it didn't even occur to me just because of the way I see the story. I see it at a different angle than readers are seeing it, and it's so interesting. And it's really it's a gift to be able to see how other people are interpreting these things.
It's really interesting to see how individuals bring their own situations to bear on the story that they're reading and how that plays out. And I think there's a lot of room for interpretation in the story of the talented in the Dominion.
And it's such a powerful story. We've used the story 5 times now. I'm sorry. In that everyone feels othered for some reason.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And what are you feeling othered for?
Yeah, I could say that I intended it to be a metaphor for otherness and feeling apart from the norm, the current of your society. And it is definitely an exploration of what it feels like to be outside the intended norm. So then anyone who feels outside the intended norm really connects to it. And that's been a really beautiful thing to behold, how people are feeling seen just because of how I interpreted magic. So that was really cool.
I had to confess that I stole this question because I did not read talent as a metaphor. I read the exploitation of talent as a metaphor for how how do I not use the word capitalism? I think I have to.
How humanity is turned into a commodity.
How everyone is exploited.
Yeah, we're all bought and sold on a commodity market to drive the interests of our greater society. Yeah, and the exploitation of the human experience.
The context for this question: the little girl who Toshway finds at the beginning, who has been mutilated and murdered, ends up being his ex-partner's daughter, which we don't find out until the very end. And this question from Sarah, who I stole it from also shamelessly, is, were you always intending for that first victim that Toshue finds to be?
I don't think so. I think that's something that I realized as I was revising.
It adds so much depth to his horror over, I mean, obviously he has a level of horror over what's happening because it's just an atrocity, right?
Yeah.
Like it's awful what the authority is doing to these people, but there's a personal level that is added when he realizes that this is the daughter of his partner.
Son's mother,
his son's mother.
It also makes it so much more concrete.
Because
up until this point, it's all been so vague.
It's so nebulous,
It makes it a lot more concrete, and it makes it a lot more personal for him, and a lot more personal of a fight for him.
I don't think he needed it to be more personal. I feel like Toshue took it on pretty personal.
He didn't necessarily need it to be more personal, but it became more personal.
Yeah.
But to me, it was the piece that made it. Sorry, Krystle. I'm talking about your book before you can.
No, it's good. I love it. I love hearing it. So go.
One of the main sticking points throughout his investigation was, how much of this can I believe? How much of this can I prove?
Yeah.
And the one thing that he can't even prove, but he does believe, is that KO had children.
Yeah.
And so being told that there's no record of them, and then him finding a record that matches the definition of one of his sources of how to track how to track the genealogy.
Lineage, yeah.
Thank you. Lineage. That kind of tied this all together of, at least for him, he no longer has that doubt of
some dots that he can connect. Yeah. And that was where my mystery thriller roots really came in. So Dennis Lehane writes mostly private eye fiction, and it was something that I had to grapple with the time period, that it's not like he could run fingerprints and DNA like you would in a modern day murder mystery. And him not having access to a crime database and whatnot, like he just didn't have the tools to really solve this murder in the same way that you would if he was in, 1990 instead of 1890. So it was something that needed to happen to close the thread of that mystery, and so that him and the reader knows what happened. And then bringing it into closing the thread of Keogh's life and Jason's life felt like a really important dimension, just to bring some definitive confidence that we know what happened. Even if we can't prove it, now we know what happened. So yeah, your read of it is really good.
Thank you.
Some dots needed to be to bring weight to the accusations in a way that fit with the time period, and in a way that could be really compelling to the reader and to the people in the book, that, okay, this must be true, and now I need to prove it.
One of the things that I really loved about this book was how, so I'm going to use Caradwyn as an example. She might be the only example, but all of the adults are very honest to the children, but not harsh.
Yeah.
They're still very kind at the same time. And that, I'm not going anywhere with this. I just really liked that. Like, she's a kid in a really rough situation. Not rough, but a tense situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And shit happens.
I think that you get, at least in a lot of other books, you get characters who are in similarly rough situations, and they sugarcoat it to the kids who are around them.
Yeah.
It's nice to see that these characters are treating Caradwyn as someone who has an adult agency and who deserves an actual response, and not just a kind of like rote kind of
everything's gonna be okay.
Yeah, exactly.
But are children smaller than adults, or are they just farther away? Okay, but Especially, I don't. Nope, I had something and then I made a joke and now I lost it. The joke was worth it though.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that it's nice to see a character like Ceridwen who is given the agency of an adult, even if she doesn't necessarily have an adult mindset and an adult's, point of view, but she is given
she's given power over her own destiny. They're empowering her.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There are so many stories. Well, I may be conflating different media, TV shows and movies and books, but there are so many stories where characters try to protect children from the reality of their situation, and then those children obviously go off and do something ill-advised because they don't understand the reality.
Yeah, I think it's probably a lens of how you view children generally. Like, I mean, all children are precious, certainly, but our job is not to protect, our job is to protect our children, but it's also to give them the tools to protect themselves, because inevitably they will not be children anymore. And I think some people treat child characters just as props to the story rather than
they have to go get into trouble, so the heroes have to go save them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Props to the story. They're driving conflict rather than being
they're not people.
Fellow human beings. Yeah.
They're people. They're just farther away.
Yeah. And it goes with, I notice stories that dehumanize children also dehumanize women. So it's just all of these things are props to the male characters for them to have a storyline to tell. Whereas when you see them all as complex humans, you get so much more interesting effects out of the whole story rather than just the man's story.
Isn't that worse? I imagine that male authors were once children. I have no proof of this, but I can assume that it is true.
Certainly the ones that I know were, but they're telling human stories too.
But like, how do you... I think this is a Terry Pratchett quote. Sarah, back me up here. That adults forget that they were once children.
Yeah.
I don't think that's specifically a Terry Pratchett quote, but I would believe it.
It's about, speaking to children like they're real people.
Yeah. Yeah, I certainly, I think about it all the time. Like, sometimes it blows my mind that these little people that live in my house are one day going to be large people that live in their own houses. But you have to actively think about it, They aren't the little babies that I remember anymore. They're autonomous, thinking, emoting, sometimes overly emoting. But that's part of the process. And I do think a lot of adults, especially...
Well, not to be crude, but isn't that the difference between children and pets?
Yeah.
Pets you keep forever and you take care of forever.
Yeah.
But children you have to let go of.
Yeah, they're not trinket. They're not props to your life. They're small people that you're trying to turn into big people, which means protecting them from the stupid things that they do, but also preparing them to protect themselves from the world. And you can't prepare them for that without telling them how rough the world is in a way that their child minds can understand.
That definitely came across in the dialogue in this book. I really appreciated that. Yeah, that's how I started this with.
Yeah, Ceridwen. Yeah, I liked writing Ceridwen. She was fun. I'm sorry for the things that I did to her.
I don't think you have to apologize for the things that you did in this book, unless you do worse things to her in the next one.
Yeah, that was ominous.
Yeah.
I mean, no, but like, we're in the spoiler section, right? She sees her mother being attacked and nearly killed. Like, that's not... That's not easy
for her. That wouldn't be easy for anyone.
Yeah.
But also that sentence that you said was very ominous.
No, I was referring to Brightwash.
No, I think that's a good point, though. Ceridwen has to experience the concept that her mother is not immortal, which is something that every child has to go through, but to go through it so really violently.
Yeah. And then, she was really gunning for having a family in Yellsmere with Toshway, and then she has to leave and face the fact that life doesn't go the way we want. She was probably a happier person at the beginning of the book than she was at the end of the book, but I think that can be said for just about everyone. So
probably
equal opportunity objectification and equal opportunity misery.
Oh, I disagree. I don't think, less miserable, but not necessarily happier. I don't think those are the same scale.
Yeah, that's fair.
That was the whole point of Krystle. The whole point of your book is that Toshway and Stella were not unhappy, but they certainly weren't happy.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I would say that in spite of the fact they're being separated, they've actually healed each other.
Yeah,
more than a bit by the end. So yeah, okay, you're right.
Not to reader-splain your book to you, but they definitely feel more optimistic.
Yeah, there's hope.
Even though their situation is bleaker, there's more hope than there had been. Yeah. So the one thing, and this is maybe a confession of how uncool I am, with the book Legacy of the Brightwash, is I did have to ask what hashish was.
Which I find really interesting because, so I'm not sure how clear we have made this through our podcast previously, but you have a lot more experience smoking than I do, right?
Weed specifically, not anything.
Weed specifically, sure, but I don't smoke, and maybe this is just because of what I have read previously, but I found the phrase hashish to not, I knew the general implications of it, even if I didn't know the specific weed connotations.
The unfortunate reality that I have discovered is that the first time you smoke a joint, it does not then also download all of the weed slang into your mind.
What?
It would be very helpful if it did.
Yeah, you gotta go with the psilocybin if you're looking for downloading new information.
So much of it is regional too. I remember teasing. I don't think the teasing landed very well, but I attempted to tease Andrew Cartmel about his weed slang in his book as well.
Yeah, I don't think he understood
was that written on Dead Wax or something?
Yes.
That was your first? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a good episode. Everyone should go listen to that one.
Oh, thank you.
Really good episode.
He was our first guest, and I really enjoy Andrew Cartmel. I mean, he's a wonderful person, and his books are really enjoyable. They're mystery and not fantasy, but they're great.
Well, my weed slang joke landed very flat at the time.
Your weed slang joke did not quite hit.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. I live in a legal state, so I don't have to deal with slang ever.
I have yet to hear a question that I was supposed to answer.
No, this is Words Are Weird.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is not specifically a question segment.
Hey, Krystle, why did you come up with so many weird weed words? What's wrong with you? How's that?
I guess I didn't realize that hashish was going to be a divisive issue among my readership.
I just wanted to clarify to make sure I wasn't wrong.
Yeah, that's fair.
I knew that it was a weed thing. I didn't know the specifics of what kind of weed and what it implied.
It's just more concentrated THC, depending on how scientific we want to get with our conversation.
Oh yeah, don't mess me up with science. That's not fair. I can do history, but I can't do science.
Anyway, that was my weed words are hard. There's too many of them. I can't keep track. Sex words are also hard, but less because you have to keep track and more because they're so loaded all of the time.
Yeah. That's why I added sex words into the Words Are Weird corner, just because it was really easy to know what I was going to say about, say, Toshway's body. I'm trying to decide now if I should spill the beans there and what I say. But there's just there's a lot of negative baggage when trying to decide which words to use for a female body, just because like all of the slang has a lot of negative connotations that like hit you kind of viscerally. Like I wasn't really sure if I want to knock people like that, but then at the same time, any of the scientific proper words are not sexy. So I think I actually left it really vague and unspecified, and I'm kind of unsatisfied with how I handled it, but I don't know, you guys just read it, so maybe you could tell if any of it worked or not.
I didn't find it particularly unsatisfying how you handled
That's a relief.
sex words. Yeah.
Is it a euphemism?
No,
Yeah.
but I thought that you dealt with sex and both the male and the female bodies in a very egalitarian way.
I don't know that I did it in an egalitarian, because I mean Toshima gets to have his cock out, but then when it's Stella, it's all vague. So
right, but that's because we see all of it from Tashua's perspective, and I didn't feel like you were shying away necessarily from showing it from Stella's perspective. Like
most of the sex scenes were written from Stella's point of view.
Well, you didn't use the word nether lips, so you got that going.
Nether lips.
That's true. I'm just
you didn't know how good you did.
That's an instant pet peeve.
I have more.
Hated. Hated.
I'm just saying that, like, I think overall you did good.
You also
That's
did not
good.
use the phrase gash.
Yeah,
that's true too.
Speaking of negative connotations.
Yeah, that one's just ugh. There's
Well,
nothing sexy there.
no, I assume that whenever that's being used, they're using it to make you angry on purpose. I don't think I've ever read that in a like pornographic scenario.
I hope.
Ugh.
Well, and then the worst version is axe wound, which is just a more like gross description of gash.
See, we're never at risk of getting hit with a gash or an axe wound in a Matar novel, but you know, there's other stuff.
Well, I have a weird comment. Clitoris.
Yeah, how do you make that sexy?
Yeah, it's very scientific, but also an important body part.
Yeah.
How do you walk
exactly.
that line?
Especially considering Toshua has proven himself to not be a superhero, and he goes down on Stella. For context, there was this thing going around on Twitter a couple of months ago where somebody at DC was talking about how it's nice to work with the supervillains, or not the supervillains, just the villains like Harley Quinn and stuff, because they could explore each other, or they could explore.
They could explore each other. Yes, they could.
They could explore the characters giving each other oral sex, because they were trying to do a storyline where Batman went down on Catwoman in one of the regular comments, and someone in the high up said, "Heroes don't do that."
Oh God.
And so a lot of Twitter was quite upset about the implication that heroes don't do that. So anyway, Tashua's not a hero, and he does that. And so what do I say? You know, because it's like, clitoris is not sexy, but it's an important part of making that so much fun. Clit is not sexy. Like, so that's why I said sex weird. Sex words are weird and really hard because we want to know what he's doing. But at the same time,
Tell us what he's doing, but don't say it.
Right, because
yeah, and how do you walk that line?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really hard line to walk is what I learned. But it's nice to know that it worked out from a reader's perspective.
I did just read a really bad romance novel, so not to diss you, but I did have a very low bar.
Yeah, maybe that helps me. All the wrong applications of sex words. Just it's an easy bar to clear. Just
Brightwash at least not include the phrase kittenscaping.
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
oh, I almost want to put it in.
Don't you dare.
Please do.
Unless you are trying to show a really awkward character who doesn't understand how to discuss adult themes, and you're like, wow, look at this character.
That or somebody like Ishmael making fun of someone.
Yes.
He would.
I want to hear Ishmael talking about kittenscaping.
Sarah, what have you done?
Sorry, not sorry.
You should be.
Nope.
Yeah, he's such a good carrier for something like that, because there's almost nothing he can say that people won't forgive, because he is so beloved of a character.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he would.
Mm-hmm.
The tone matters though, right? In the book that I read, the character using that phrase was the daring sexual one, and that was her being daring and sexual, and it was just hard.
Oh God.
It was hard.
Oh God.
Yeah.
I don't.
If I ever ask you about kittenscaping, you know that it's an imposter.
Yeah.
Or you're making fun of me.
Yeah.
How do we tell that we've been kidnapped?
Yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
Let's make a pact right now. If anyone ever DMs the other one with the phrase kittenscaping,
Call the cops.
Call the police.
Right now.
Can you tell us a little bit about your current projects?
So obviously I've been working on the sequel to Legacy of the Brightwash, which will be Legacy of Brick and Bone. That book's horny. Holy. It's getting a little away from me at this point, where I'm starting to wonder if it's too much.
It's never too much.
Say that. Never
it's
say
never
that.
too much.
I feel like even if it is too much, it's on brand that it's too much.
It's not too much.
You realize what podcast you're on, right?
Yeah, it's not too much. We want it all.
Fiction fans, the horny gang.
Yep.
Equal opportunity objectification.
Equal opportunity objectification. We are horny for Brightwash.
There's
not the river. Not into rivers.
Are you sure about that?
Yes.
I bet the right person could make that sexy though. Like,
there's also a lot of dark shit. In this book.
Yeah, so that's the other half. That book's horny, but that book gets a little darker just because everyone's dealing with the fallout of what has gone on. So I'm leaving all the horny and try to balance.
As you should.
So there's a lot coming from you very soon.
Yeah.
Where can we follow you to find out about that on the internet?
Mostly I'm on Twitter, so at Krystle Matar. I'm on Instagram, again, at Krystle Matar. But I drop all the best teasers on Twitter, so if you want to know what's coming, Twitter is the place to find me.
And your website is also?
I think I also have a website. Yeah. I also have a website, just krystlematar.com, where I have almost nothing, but also there's signed books available for sale there. So if you really like Brightwash, you can get a signed hardcover.
So
there.
You should buy a signed hardcover there.
Yeah.
Or all of the books with none of the spoilers.
Yeah.
Before we get too far, I would like to thank you for coming on and then release you from being on the record so that we're not recording anymore.
Thank you very much for having me again. I hope I get to keep coming back.
Oh, Krystle, thank you so much for joining us. This was so much fun.
There is no question about that. Like, Krystle, you're gonna be on again. I can guarantee it.
You're stuck with us now.
That's why I asked you after you've been drinking.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Fiction Fans.
Come disagree with us. We're on Twitter and Instagram at FictionFansPod. You can also email us at fictionfanspod@gmail.com.
If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review on Apple Podcasts and follow us wherever your podcasts live.
Thanks again for listening, and may your villains always be defeated. Bye!
Bye!